There is reportedly a 3-year offer on the table for the New York Mets to sign Pete Alonso. But this contract was proposed from Alonso's camp to the Mets. What are we to make of the latest in the Pete Alonso saga? I'm going to break it all down on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Well, I'm trying. I'm not trying very hard to get away from the Pete Alonso story on this show, but each and every day some things come up that are worth talking about. And I really wanted to get to a point where I wasn't just rehashing the same information over and over again, but we got new information on Friday. There was a report that was very interesting, and it was first reported by Jim Duquette of SNY, later confirmed by Will Salmon of The Athletic, and the report is that there is a 3-year offer on the table for Pete Alonso to sign with the New York Mets. But that offer did not come from the Mets. It comes from the other side, from Pete Alonso's representation, that the Mets right now have an exclusive offer on the table to sign Pete Alonso to a 3-year deal with opt-outs after each of those first 2 seasons. So it's basically 2 player options after the first year. It's the same contract that Cody Bellinger signed with the Cubs last year. That deal was a 3-year, $80 million deal. The expectation is Alonso would make a little bit more. There's been all these rumblings, right? Is there a 3-year, $90 million offer on the table from the Mets to Alonso? Now, if that offer existed, I'm thinking it was the other way around, where that might be what the Boras camp is proposing to the Mets, and the Mets haven't jumped on it yet. Because this is a strange report to come out. And it's not just, oh, somebody let something slip. I mean, Jim Duquette said league sources, but the bottom line is this has gotten out into the ether for a reason. And I really think this is a way right now to try to curry some favor back towards Pete, to get the court of public opinion on Pete's side a little bit, because it's definitely at this point skewing more towards the fan base being on the Mets side. I think I might put a poll out there today on YouTube just to see where you're at with it. But to me, this is a way to try to get some momentum back on Pete's side. And there was the story that came out earlier this week, and I never addressed it on this show because I sort of sought out for what it was in the beginning, where I just didn't think it was a real thing. But Bob Nightingale had, put in one of his stories about Pete Alonso that the Boras camp was asking for Prince Fielder money, using Prince Fielder as a comp in his 9-year, $214 million deal as what Pete Alonso should get. And I just thought, there's no way, as delusional as Scott Boras can be, there's no way, even if they started there, which who knows, but there's no way at this point in time they were still using that figure, because the market just is not there for a 9-year deal. That's absurd. So I didn't really give it much airtime or any airtime on this show, but it does seem like they have gone out of their way since that came out. And Bob Nightingale scrubbed that from the story. And John Heyman came out to conflict that report, as others have as well, that they're trying to push back on that. And so now you put it out there, oh, well, we have a 3-year offer that we have proposed to the Mets for them to accept this exclusive offer. No other team that's in on Pete Alonso can get this deal. Why is that being put out there right now? I think it's to put some pressure on the Mets. But we don't know the dollar amount. It could be 3 years, $125 million. I doubt it. It probably is close to that $90 million range. But this is, at this point, an attempt to get the Mets to say yes to that deal and to put some public pressure on the Mets. Because now, if it is a 3-year, $90 million deal, and we all thought that was coming from the other direction, that we thought that Alonso wanted 6 years, and John Heyman did report that earlier this week, but we thought Alonso wanted a long-term deal, and the Mets were pushing for short-term. Now, if there is a short-term deal on the table, what's the holdup? I think what could be happening here is the Mets might have gone into this negotiation from the very beginning, and they might have said, we love Pete. We love him. We want him back. You'll notice we're not doing anything at first base. We plan to bring Pete Alonso back, but go out in the market and get a deal for us. Get a deal that we can look at, and we will match whatever the market value is for Pete Alonso. And my guess, and this is complete guess, maybe there hasn't been a single offer from any team. I don't think anybody wants Pete Alonso but the Mets at this point. John Heyman could say there's 8 teams that are in. I think there's one team that's in. I think everyone in the industry expects the Mets to sign Pete Alonso. Everybody went out of their way to fill their first base needs, and no one is in the camp right now of offering Pete Alonso a contract. And I think that this is, for one, a way to put pressure on the Mets to accept whatever this deal is. But also, I think this could be a roundabout way to maybe get other teams in on Pete Alonso. You say it's an exclusive deal. Only the Mets can sign Pete Alonso to that contract. But if you are a GM of another team, are you maybe now all of a sudden thinking, I'd like Pete Alonso on a 3-year deal. It's exclusive to the Mets, but the Mets aren't biting. We'd like to throw a hat in the ring for that 3-year deal. And maybe then, when there is another team in the bidding, you can put the Mets' foot to the fire a little bit. But the Mets at this point have sort of gotten off scotch-free, that they're playing this right and they're being patient. And I have been on their side about that the whole way through. I think Pete should get his money. I think they should come to terms on a deal. But I've never said, hey, pay him whatever he wants. And I have said multiple times the Mets' patience should pay off here, where either they would get him to sign one of these short-term contracts with the opt-outs, or he would come back on a team-friendly, longer-term deal. But now if you're telling me that offer is right there for the Mets to take, what is stopping them from getting this signed and letting us all move past it? Because we're all tired of the story. I want to talk about that in the next segment, but first, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime, fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater events near you. And their GameTime Picks feature is going to make it easier for you to get tickets for your favorite live event, because GameTime Picks is going to filter out the fluff and show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. And you can also view your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds. GameTime also is the place to go for last-minute tickets, selling tickets up to an hour after the event starts. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our next goal is to get to 12,000 subscribers. Appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. All right, so if there is this offer on the table, why haven't the Mets budged? Why aren't they taking it? Well, could be a couple of reasons. The first one's obvious: too much money. 3-year deal, opt-out, sounds great, sounds team-friendly enough. But how much money is it going to cost? Are the Mets in the position where they want to pay Pete Alonso $30 million a season, even on a 3-year deal? Are they waiting this thing out, cold-blooded, waiting for this thing to drop to 3 years, $75 million? Are they in the position where they don't want to give him the opt-outs? Do they want to give him a 3-year deal straight up? Christian Walker, 3-year deal. I'm pretty sure there was no opt-outs in that. Now, he's 34 years old. I don't think he's really trying to test the market again. Are the Mets in a position where they want Pete for at least 2 years? Are they saying, we want Pete Alonso for 2025 and 2026? If he has 2 great years, he could test the market after that. That's a possibility. So all of this comes down to what the Mets really want here. What is the outcome they've been searching for? And nobody knows that. I thought it was get Pete Alonso on a 3-year deal with the opt-outs. I thought that that's what they were hoping to get towards. But maybe it's not. Maybe they wanted Pete Alonso for the 4 or 5-year deal, but at the low average annual value. Maybe they don't want to pay 110 cents on the dollar on $30 million, and they would prefer Pete Alonso to sign a 5-year deal where he's getting like $20 million a season. Why pay Pete Alonso $90 million over 3 years if you think the market is so bad that you can get him for $100 million over 5? Get 2 extra years for just $10 million more. It's really tough to gauge where the Mets are at with this, because before it felt like it was pretty obvious where they were at. Now, again, the difference could just be the money here. It could be as simple as the Mets had a 3-year $90 million offer. Maybe it was 3 years 80. And now the Boras camp has been agreeable to that structure, but they want more money. We don't know. But I think this reporting today, it definitely it puts pressure on the Mets for sure. There's no doubt about it. Because Mets fans are looking at this and they're saying, well, isn't that what we wanted? We were scared of the long-term years. Isn't that the problem? So I think that's one side of it. And the other one is what I mentioned before. Maybe this is a way to open up the doors to get another team in the mix. If I had to guess, again, my thought now is the Mets really went into this with the strategy of bring us your best offer and we're going to match it. And they haven't had a best offer to put in front of the Mets. There has not been a team that's out there that has put an offer on the table. And you could say, well, why couldn't they just make something up? Well, if Scott Boras tells the Mets, oh yeah, the Giants offered us 3 years, $90 million. They say, okay, well, we need to think about it real quick, Scott. And then who's the GM over there now? Well, Buster Posey's the president. And was it is there who is the GM? It doesn't matter. Let's just say David Stearns calls up Buster and says, hey, did you guys offer Pete Alonso a contract? Scott's telling me that you got a $90 million offer on the table. Like, you can't just blatantly lie, right? Now, you can put in the newspaper that 8 teams are interested. But if you're going to bring an offer to the Mets, there has to be some substance behind it. So maybe that's what this whole thing has been. The Mets were dead set on letting Alonso test his market. I think that was absolutely the strategy, and no market has developed. And so they've been waiting so that they could get the best possible deal. And now by putting this out there, you are putting some fan pressure on the Mets to just end this, to get something done, to get both sides to the table and figure out this 3-year deal. Because I'm sure Scott Boras is telling Pete at this point, which is what I talked about in the show. I think this past week I did a show on it, that Pete Alonso should take the short-term deal. He should bet on himself in the New York Mets. I really believe that's the case. I think it is the best thing for Pete Alonso's career at this point. For him to maximize his earnings, he should take this contract. But again, now it's proposed to the Mets. But he should want this contract, get some big number in 2025, put up a monster season batting behind Juan Soto, and test his market again. And he'll ultimately end up doing better. And I think he might be able to beat out that extension he turned down going along this route. But maybe the Mets just aren't in on Pete Alonso at all. I think that this was, again, a long play for the Mets to get him on the best possible deal. And this might be that first sort of inkling of Alonso's frustration, Boras's frustration, and them wanting to get something done, but done on their terms. Will the Mets bend at all? We'll find out when the contract is reported, if it's reported. But there might be some other teams now that start to think about it. They start to think, man, the Mets have this offer on the table and they're not taking it. It's exclusive to the Mets until you call and say you're interested. It's easy to put an exclusive offer out there if no other team's in on it. But now another team's in on it. Well, now you go, well, I got a fish on the hook. And you try to get the most you can out of the Mets. So we'll see how this whole thing plays out. Because of this report, I feel like a deal gets done soon. How soon that is, anyone's guess. But whenever a contract is announced, I will hop on live here. And actually, one last thing I should say about this whole thing. We are getting to a point where there's too many people that are looking at the faults in Pete Alonso's game. And it's just something I just tweeted out. And before I was recording the show, I was doing some prep. I was reading Will Salmon's article on The Athletic about the Alonso proposed contract. And he has a note in there where he talks about executives. Let me read exactly what he says. I don't want to misquote Will Salmon here, but it's showing you that we're trying to do everything we can to knock this guy. So here's what he says. Still, while some scouts and executives across the league see Alonso continuing to hit home runs at a strong pace, they wonder how the rest of his game will age. He does not walk at a particularly high rate and doesn't play above average defense. Pete Alonso, his walk rates have been steady his entire career, and his walk rates this past year had him in the 75th percentile. What does that mean? He doesn't walk at a particularly high rate, but he walks in the top 0.25% of the league? 10% walk rate is good. Pete Alonso's career, 10.4%, 10%, 9.4%, 9.8%, 9.9%, 10.1%, and he walked over 20% of the time in the playoffs. So that's ridiculous. You want to knock his defense? By all means. He's got a noodle for an arm. He doesn't have range. I get that. Does he hit for high average? No. But now we're coming at his walk rates. It's just like we're trying to make this guy seem like the worst player imaginable. And we're forgetting that he's one of the most prolific run producers in baseball. So I get frustrated and defensive for Pete when I see something like that. That's just completely inaccurate. Whether that's sources getting it wrong for Will Salmon or Will Salmon not understanding walk rates in baseball and what's considered, high or a low walk rate. Because 10% is a good walk rate, and consistency in a walk rate shows that a player is not regressing when it comes to their discipline. Alex Bregman, career walk rate over 12% until this past season, walk rate in his walk year of 6.9%. That's a concerning walk rate. That's alarming to me. That tells me there might be a decline there in his discipline. What happened? Was he cheating now more? Was he guessing more? Is he not seeing the ball as well? Is the bat speed not there? Like, why was his walk rate significantly worse than it's been throughout his career? Pete Alonso, when it comes to walk rate, same dude year in, year out. But that's my little diatribe on that. That'll be all for the show this week, unless we get more reports. Anyway, that's going to be all again. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Next with Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be Locked On Mets Insider, you can find the link in the episode description. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. After your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. We're talking about Locked On Sports today with our local host from each team, league-wide host from each league. Find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.